Today we'll see how to use OpenSQL statements. Since we are already aware of creating database tables, you're already aware of how foreign keys are assigned, what is check table, what is value table, and how we maintain data in the database tables. Today we'll see how to use OpenSQL statements. When we use these OpenSQL statements, select to read the data from database table into program level. We use select statement to read data from database table, okay, into our program, and we temporarily store the data in program in data objects like variables, work area, or internal table. Depends on number of records we are selecting, depends on number of columns we are selecting. Okay, we store data in corresponding data object. Okay, we have insert. So insert statement is used to create new records in the database table. Okay, it is used to create new records in the database table. Inserting records. Update. What is update statement?
Update the
To update the existing record. So the record should be already available in the database table. Okay, then only update statement will work. Like whatever the record you are trying to update, for example employee id 100, you are trying to update the employee city, but that employee id 100 record is not available in the database table. Is this update statement going to work? No, it will fail because there is no such record in the database table. Modify. What is modify? Modify statement is to update the record, update the existing record, update the existing record. If the record is not available in database, what it will do? It will insert a new record. It will insert a new record. Okay, update plus insert. If the record is available, it will update the record. If the record is not available, it will insert as a new record whatever the record you are trying to update. Okay, delete. So what is the use of delete statement? It deletes records from the database table. Okay, it deletes database records from the database table. Okay, is everyone clear? So we use OpenSQL statements to read the data from database tables, to insert the data, update the data, or delete the data. Okay, is everyone clear? Now, so why we use OpenSQL and why we call it as OpenSQL? So OpenSQL statements are database independent statements. So what kind of statements are these OpenSQL statements? Database independent statements, right? Allows to access the database tables. Okay. So OpenSQL statements are database independent statements. It's allow you to access the database table, that is either read the database table, insert new records or update new records. Okay. How these OpenSQL statements are designed to work on any backend database. Okay. These are database independent statements. These are database independent statements, right? Whatever the database it is, right? This OpenSQL statement should work. Okay. But generally, how the SQL statements will work? Every database, every database like Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, DB2. So whatever the SQL statements we are going to write are the same in every database table. Sorry, every database. The SQL syntaxes are they going to be same? There are slight differences, some differences. How we write SQL statements in different databases. In Oracle, we write one kind of syntaxes. In Microsoft SQL Server, there are different syntax, right? But overall, SQL is almost same, but there are some differences in the syntax. Depends on the database. But here in SAP ABAP, we write OpenSQL statement, which should automatically convert these statements into corresponding database native SQL statements. Okay, corresponding database native SQL statements depends on the backend database. OpenSQL statements will be converted to corresponding native SQL statements. You do not need to worry about backend database. Okay. Okay. What is native SQL? What is native SQL? Native SQL statements will work only on a specific database. Okay. What are the native SQL statements? These are specific to a database. So if you write native SQL statements for one database, the same may not work for different database. Okay. Is everyone clear?
Yes. Means if it is Oracle, it will convert into Oracle
Uh,
native database like statements. And
Sorry, your voice is not clear.
if we use Oracle or PostgreSQLs like databases,
Hmm.
so the open SQL statements will automatically transform into the native.
Yes,
That's what we
yes,
say.
yes. That
Okay,
yes.
okay.
In ABAP, we write only OpenSQL statements. There is a possibility of writing native SQL statements also. Okay, native SQL
Okay.
statements also can be implemented, but it is not
Uh,
recommended. Okay,
okay. Okay.
So native SQL statements are not recommended. You can write native SQL statements. For example, what is the database currently using for ECC? For example, let's assume we are on ECC. We are using Oracle database. If you write native SQL statement which supports only on Oracle database, then what will happen? In future, you may migrate to a different database, right? You may migrate to different database. At that time, are these native SQL statements on Oracle going to work?
No.
No, they are not going to work. Then you need to modify all your programs, right? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
So that is the dependency. Okay. So when you write a database dependent statement, so there is a issue with maintenance in future. If you want to change the database, right, you need to modify complete applications, all the applications, otherwise they're not going to work. Okay, in very rare cases we use, okay, in very rare cases we use native SQL statements. Okay, but in general SAP is recommended to use open SQL statements. Okay, and there is another dependency. If you want to use a native SQL statement, one customer might be using Oracle, another customer might be using MS SQL Server. So developer should have knowledge on those different SQLs, right? Different native SQLs, right? They need to learn native SQL for Oracle. They need to learn a native SQL for Microsoft SQL Server. There is a You need to understand different native SQLs. But if you use OpenSQL, you don't need to worry about any native SQL statements. You can write a uniform OpenSQL statements throughout the ABAP system, right?
Yes.
Very rare cases we go with the native SQL. If the table is not available in data dictionary, in some rare cases, the table will be available in only backend database that is not accessible in data dictionary. So, in few cases, we go for native SQL statements. Okay. In S4 HANA, what is the database we are using? HANA database, right? We are using HANA database. So since we are using only HANA database, S4 HANA is not compatible to any other database. S4 HANA is compatible to run only on HANA database. Can we use native SQL statements?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah,
We can use.
we can use, but SAP is not recommending it. Okay, SAP always recommending to use OpenSQL statements even in S4 HANA. Okay, because we never
Okay.
know what we are going to implement in future, right? SAP itself might come up with a different database which performs better than HANA, right? There will be some changes in the market and someone might invent a new technology where we need to update our SAP ERP system. At that time, there should not be an issue with native SQL statements, right? So you do not need to change all the applications. That's why SAP is always recommending to use OpenSQL statements to reduce the future dependencies. Okay, is everyone clear? Is everyone clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we use select statement to read the records from the database tables into application program, and where we temporarily store those records in
Data
program
objects.
level in data objects. We store them in the data objects. Okay. Now, how to write a select statement? We'll see the syntax of the select statement. How many ways we can read the data? How many ways we can read the data? What are the different data objects? Variables, work area, internal table. So when we use variable,
It holds only single
single
variable.
field value, single column value. For example, employee ID. To hold only that single column value in the program runtime, we use variable. What is work area? Work area can hold a single record. Okay. Work area can hold a single record. Okay. Record contains one or more columns. In that record is a meaningful data. It might contain like employee ID, name, city, a meaningful information. Okay. An internal table, one or more records. Okay. One or more records. And this is the syntax to define the internal table, work area, and variables by using data statements. By using data statements. Now, to read data from a database table into corresponding data objects, what we need to do. So we use select statement to read the data, right? We use select statement to read the data, and we place that record into corresponding internal table or work area, or sometimes we can also use variable if you are selecting only a single field. Okay. Now, how to write these select statements? How to write these select statements in the program? Let's see how to write these select statements in the program. How many ways we can write the select statements? Let's see here. Select single is one type of select statement, right? One type of select statement syntax to read only one record from database table to. So what is the suitable data object for this? To read only one single record.
Work area.
Work area. Okay. To read one single record from a database table to work area. To read single record, what is required? For example, there is a employee ID, employee master table, right? To read one single record, what is the input? What is the input we need to pass to select a specific employee? What is the input we need to pass?
Employee.
We need to pass
Yeah.
employee ID. Then it will give you the corresponding record. Is there any chance of multiple employee IDs, multiple records with same employee ID in employee ID master table?
No.
No, because employee ID is the only primary key. All the records will be maintained, all the records will be accepted by that primary key value. So that there is no chance of one more record with the same employee ID. You are going to get only one record. Let's take employee salary data. If you pass only employee ID as input, how many records you are going to get?
One.
One.
One record or multiple records?
If it is with
One record only.
one record only.
The employee salary data table. Let's check that then. First, we'll check employee master data. I want to read details of employee 100. Okay, I got one record. I'm passing employee ID as input, so I got one record. Right now, go to employee salary data, pass employee ID 100 as input, execute. How many records we got?
Two records.
Two
Two records.
records. Why? Because here employee ID is not only the primary key, there is another primary key. Employee's date also there, right? So this table accepts multiple records for the same employee ID, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
If you pass only one input, are you going to get a single record?
No.
No. So you have to pass another primary key also, right? When you are using select single statement, what is mandatory? You have to pass all primary key inputs. Whatever the primary key is there in the table, you have to pass all the inputs. That is recommended. Okay? Is everyone clear? If there are five primary key fields in a table, you have to pass all five primary key inputs in the where condition to select that single record, because you are trying to select one single record. You have to specify what is that exact record you are trying to select. All right. If you do not pass the complete primary key inputs, you cannot get that, because it can find multiple records with the same ID, right? You have to tell the system that what is that exact record you want to select. Okay, zero and clear.
Yes. So for that we need to use a combination or conditional.
In condition, you have to pass input values, right? What is the employee ID? What is the salary date? Then you can get the exact record what you are trying to find. If you just pass the employee ID, which month salary record you are trying to get, system is not clear, right? It will select the first available record. If you do not pass the complete primary key, right, what it will do, it will select the first available record and display it, right? It will work. The select statement will work even though you do not pass all the primary key conditions. But it cannot find that exact record. It can just find the first available record. Since there are multiple with the same key, right? It will just find the first available and keep it in the data object. Okay, that is not the recommended approach. You have to pass all primary keys in the where condition. How to write a select statement? Select single statement. Select single star from where you need to select the data. What you have to mention here? From what you have to mention? Database table. For example, zdemo employee, right? Zdemo employee, or I'll keep it like this. Database table. After selecting the data, where you need to keep the data?
No object.
Into where you need to keep it, some data object. So since we are selecting a single record, so where you need to keep work area. For example, define one work area using data statement. What is a prerequisite to use work area here? You need to define it. Okay, you need to define it. How to define it? How to define a work area?
Data.
Data. Work area name can be anything. You can sometimes you can use WA, right, or LS. It depends on the project naming standards. Okay. For example, WA underscore MP data. Type. What is the type you need to take here?
Uh,
Corresponding database table, so that it will define work area corresponding to all the columns in this database table. Okay. So select single from database table into work area. You defined from where you need to select the data and where you need to keep the data in which data object. What about the condition? Which record you want to select? How you need to define it? What is the record that we need to select? Condition. How can we pass conditions in select statements? Using
Where?
where column name. For example, employee ID equal to input value. Input value can be parameter or variable or constant. Okay, you can pass parameter. What is a parameter?
you can pass only a single value as well.
It's a selection screen input, right? Parameter is a selection screen
Yes, sir.
input where you can pass the data, right? Single input value. Okay, you can pass that. You can use a variable, a data object which contains single field value, or you can also use a constant value. Okay, constant value. So input value can be, you can also pass constant values. Okay, okay, you can also pass constant value as input and ends with dot. Okay, and this is how you are going to define the data object for select single, since you are trying to select a single record. Now, what is this star?
Sorry, select all.
It is a package.
Star is to select all the columns of the database tables. It is single record only, but all the columns. Single record with all the columns. For example, the database table contains 10 columns. 10 columns, field 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When you use star, what we are defining here, I want to select all the columns of the database table. Record is single. Record is single with all the columns like this. A single record with all the columns. Okay. Okay. We are going to select all the records. Sorry, all the columns into a single record. What is select single? How many columns are there in employee data? 8 columns, right? 8 columns. Eight columns are there in the employee salary data table. What is select single? Sorry, select single star. Selecting all 8 columns. Employee ID, name, DOJ, country, phone number, and social media, everything. All the columns. Record is single, right? But that record contains all the columns. Okay, is everyone clear? The example, select single star from ZDemo employee into, first we'll define a data object. Okay, define the data object and select single star from ZDemo employee into WA underscore, what is the data object name? EMP data, where EMP ID, that means field name, equal to it's a constant value, right? Instead of this constant value, you can also pass parameter, variable, or by defining its hard-coded value, right? You can also define a constant and pass it here. Okay, this is how we write the select statement for select single. Then what is this statement? Select single with the required columns. Select single with required columns. So what we are trying to select here? We are trying to select only required columns. So it is the recommended approach. We do not select all the columns every time. So select only required columns. So it will improve the performance. It will improve the performance of your select statement, right? It will improve the time transferring data from database layer to application layer, right? Everything depends on the size, right? Even if you take any data transfer in your mobile phones like pictures and videos, the time it depends on the size of the file, right? Here also you are trying to transfer data from database layer to application layer, when you are writing a select statement, right? If you try to select all the columns data, even though they are not necessary, it will increase the size of the data, right? So it will take time to for the data transfer, right? But if you select only required columns data, whatever the columns required in your scenario, right? It will improve the performance, and it is always the recommended approach. Do not blindly use select single star, selecting all the columns. Select only required columns. Okay? Is everyone clear? But can we use the same work area to select only required columns?
No.
If you use this work area is defined with reference to the complete database table. So this work area contains all the fields of the database table, but now you are trying to select only specific fields. In that case, this is not going to work. Then what you need to do?
Structure.
You need to create a structure. Okay, create a structure, define that work area with reference to that structure. We'll see the concept called type structure. Okay, structure is a database object, right? Database object, and it is global. You can use in any program and in any tables. Type structure, it is also a kind of structure which we use to group the columns local to the program, only within the program. Okay, locally we define this type structure. Okay, so we define the type structure like this. Types begin of ty underscore data. This this is this can be any name. We define always by naming convention. What we keep here, employee id, type. What is the type? Corresponding data element, comma. What is the other column we need? City, type, corresponding data element. I think ORT01 underscore GP. We are using the standard data element. And end of ty underscore data. This is how we define the type structure, right? You can also create a structure, data dictionary structure also you can create. Okay, you can also create data dictionary structure, right? But if you want to define the structure locally in the program, you can use this type structure. Okay, you can use this type structure and use the type structure in the data declaration here. Okay, when you are trying to select only selected records, specific records. Is everyone clear?
Yes.
And what is the recommended approach? Selecting only required columns. Do not use star, because it's going to get all the columns data even though you are not using in your program. Okay, it is
Can we
unnecessary.
reuse this structure?
Sorry,
Can we reuse the structure?
structures can be reused, right? Once you create the
Type,
structure in data dictionary, you can use it in any program. Okay, as long as you need to select only these two columns, you can use it, right? But type structure is local to the same program. You cannot reuse it.
okay, type
Okay,
structure is okay, independent.
it is local. So we have advanced syntaxes where you do not need to use type structures. So we use a concept called inline declaration. Okay, we'll also see that how we use inline declaration concept. You do not need to define any data object, right? You can directly write a select statement. The data declaration of is also happened in the select statement itself by using inline declaration concept. We'll see that in the next session. Now, is everyone clear on this?
Amar, can you please repeat for the work area structures? Can you please repeat
What
it?
is work area? Work area is a data object which we use to store single record during program runtime, right? Single record during program runtime. So it contains a single record like this. What is a record? Record contains some meaningful information like multiple columns, right? So we define work area to store a single record during program runtime. Here, the corresponding select statement for work area is select single. So what is use of select single statement? To read a single record from database table into work area. It will keep one single record from database table and keep it in the work area. Okay, during program runtime. So we can use that work area record for any processing, data processing, right? To define the work area, what you need to do using data statement, we use type reference to the database table. When we use database table, when we need to select all the columns of the table. So at that time we use database table reference to define the work area. But if you do not need all the columns, we need only specific columns.
Okay.
Then which one we need to use? If we use database table, again it will refer to the complete column, complete table columns. That is not
Yeah.
required, right? In that case,
Yeah.
we create a structure with required fields, right? We create a structure with required fields, or we create a type structure with required fields in the program level. Okay? And we use that structure or type structure to define the work area. In this case, this work area contains only those selected columns. Okay? In the select statement, use the same order. Whatever the columns you defined in the structure or in the type structure, use the same order to select the data. Right? Is everyone clear? Let's create a simple program. What is the transaction code to create a program?
SC38.
Go to SC38. What is mandatory when you are using select single statement? Passing all primary key fields. The where condition, that is mandatory. Mandatory in the sense that is recommended. But even though if you do not pass all the primary key fields, it will select the data. But is it going to select that exact record? No, it will select the first available record. If there are multiple records with the same ID.
So while creating type structure, you need to provide all primary keys.
No, you do
So in
not
that,
need to provide because type structure we are just grouping the columns what you want to select as output, right? So which columns I want to select from the database tables. That is not the where condition, right? That's not the condition where you need to pass, right? To filter
okay,
the data. So in the type structure, we define which columns we need to select from the database table.
okay.
Let's write a simple select statement to select the data from employee master table, ZDemo employee. Let's assume I need to select all the columns of the database table, including email ID, phone number, everything. I want to display all the columns of that database table record. Then what we need to do first, define the database object, data object. How to define? Assign some meaningful name. This name can be anything, but always follow some naming convention. Otherwise, you can use any name here, right? Whatever the objects I am using in lowercase, right? That name we need to assign. That is not part of the standard syntax. But always try to use meaningful name for that. Type. What is the database table name? ZDemo employee. Now we define a memory for the data object to hold the data temporarily in the application server. Okay. Now what is the next step? Select single. That means select a single record. Star all columns of the table. Select all columns of the table from table name, and where you need to keep that record once that is selected into where data
Work
object.
area.
You can break the statements into multiple lines, okay, just for the formatting, okay. Where to filter the data, where what is the primary key field?
Employee ID.
ID equal to what is the record you wanted to select. For example, 100. I'm hard coding this, right? But in general we use parameters. Can we use non-primary key fields also in the where condition? For example, city. And if you want to add multiple columns in the where condition, city equal to Hyderabad. Can we pass non-primary key fields in the where condition of select single?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Right? But what is mandatory? Passing all primary keys are mandatory, right? But along with primary key columns, you can also pass non-primary key columns as input. Okay? Is everyone clear?
So work area is to be created only for database tables.
Sorry, what is it? Can you repeat it?
Work area is created only for database tables only.
Here, did we create for only database tables? Did we define work area only for database tables?
Okay, structures as
No,
well.
right? We created for structures and type structures as well. Okay?
Okay.
We'll see that in the next example. How to create it for structures. Now, this is how I'm passing the where condition. If you want to add more columns in the where condition, use and add next column to add more filters. You can also use or. What do you mean by or? Either this one
Either one.
or the next one, right? If any one should be true, then it will try to execute the statement, right? Either it will select by employee ID 100 or by city Hyderabad. But what is and? For that record, for that record, employee ID should be 100, city should be Hyderabad. Only that record will be selected. Is everyone clear? Between and or, you can pass multiple columns in the where condition using and or condition. For now, just use one. Now, select statement is completed. How do you know that select statement is successfully executed?
We need to get the output.
We need to get the output. That is one way. Is there any other way that the select statement is successfully executed and selected some record? Some record in the sense whatever the record you are trying to select. For that we use a if statement. I'll take a separate class on if statements for just now for just observe the syntax. If we have a system variables concept in ABAP, we have a system variables concepts which holds some default values or system values during program runtime. For example, system date, system time, right? Current status, number of records selected. So for all of these, we use a corresponding system variable. Okay. If sy all the system variables will start with sy. Okay. Hyphen sy and hyphen sub rc sy sub rc. This is one system variable which we use to check the status of the statement. Okay, status of the statement, this we are going to use very common. Okay, in any program, sy subrc sy hyphen subrc. What does this system variable contains? It contains number values from 0 to 4, where 0 means successful, 4 means failed. Okay, when sub rc value is set to 0, that means the previous statement is successfully executed or failed.
Executed successfully.
Successfully executed. Okay, 4 means anything not equal to 0. Anything that is not equal to 0 means failed. Okay, anything that is not equal to 0, that means it is failed. Okay, so how can you know that select statement is executed successfully or not? By checking the sub rc value. So why we need to check? We need to perform the next operation only the previous statement is successfully executed. Otherwise, we need to do some alternative solution. But to implement that alternative, how can you check whether the previous statement is successfully executed or not? By checking the sub rc. If sub rc equal to 0 means the statement is successfully executed and selected at least one record. Okay, is everyone clear?
Amar,
So,
should we use this statement like if
Your
sy
voice is very
equals
low. Can you speak loud?
can am I audible? So
Yes.
this is to be checked before the execution of the statement or after the execution of the statement?
After, before execution, then what is the use? Right? We check this after
Yeah.
execution of the select statement to check whether the select statement is successful or failed.
Okay, okay. And it is
Okay.
to be like checked for every statement where execute
In ABAP, we check sub-RC checks for many statements like insert,
means
update, delete, select, read.
for every statement we need to
Yeah,
check,
most of
right?
the statements we do sub-RC check to know whether it is successful or failed.
Okay.
Okay. Not for every statement, but I'll tell you like what are the will work like whatever the statements we use. Okay. There is another alternative for this. How can we know? If by using the data object, wa underscore emp data is not initial. What do you mean by is not initial? Is empty or is there some record?
Is there some record?
Is not initial means there is some value. That means we are able to select some value into work area. That means it is not empty, right? It is not empty. What is initial? I'll remove not. What do you mean by is initial?
Is empty.
It is empty. There is no value. That means select statement is not executed successfully, right? We can also use this. Initial, not initial. Initial means if it is empty. Is not initial means if it is not empty. Okay. But in general, we use sub RC check. I'll comment this for your reference. Okay. I'll comment this for your reference. But in general, we use sub RC check. If sub RC equal to 0, what we need to do? Just display the output. How to display the output?
Right statement.
Check syntax
By
and
using
execute.
write
Right
statement, we
statement.
display the output. Okay. By using write statement. WA underscore emp data. Okay. Check. Activate. Execute. This is the record, right? Rest of the columns are blank. That's why there is no value for it. Employee ID, name, city, date of join, country, and phone number, I think. Right? Is everyone clear? You can also use individual columns like this hyphen, emp, id, comma, fun, city. Use chain operator, this one, since we are referring to multiple columns. So what does this means? I am selecting all the columns from database table into data object, but I want to display only selected columns. I am selecting all the columns, right? I am selecting all the columns, but when I am trying to display, I wanted to select all, I wanted to display only selected columns. That's why I am using this hyphen column names. You are selecting the complete record, but displaying only limited columns, only 3 columns in the output. Okay? Is everyone clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, instead of this hard coded value, what is the alternative? Define a parameter p underscore empid type. What is the type we need to take? Corresponding data element. What is the data element for employee id? Check the table, provide the data element name here, and use this parameter here instead of hard coded value, so that every time you can select a dynamic value, right? A new employee id you can select every time, right? Whenever the user executed it. For example, 101. You can change the input, right? Every time if you can use a parameter. Looks like there is no record for 102. That's why it is not displaying. Try 103. There is a record for 103. So when there is no proper record, we can display the corresponding message instead of output. How can you check? Else. What do you mean by else?
If not,
Other than the above statement. Sub r is equal to 0 we are checking here, right? Other than 0, if the value is other than 0, any value other than 0, then this will execute, right? No data available type, sorry. If there is no record, the select statement will fail. In that case, we are going to display, right, one message to the user that hey, there is no record available for that corresponding value 102. Okay. In the else part, else means if the above one is failed, then that will come to this part. Okay, clear? Is everyone clear on this?
Yes. Amar, can you please repeat parameters?
Now let's
Yes.
see. Sorry, are you someone speaking?
Yeah. Can you please repeat for parameters? Just
Your voice is very low. I'm not sure is it only for me or for everyone.
Sir, he is
uh,
asking to repeat the parameters for
parameters.
Okay.
One second.
So what is the parameters? To accept the user inputs. Parameters are used to accept the user inputs. Okay. So that user can dynamically pass different values every time the program is executed. Right? So where these
Yes.
parameters are going to be displayed? So parameters is the syntax. Parameters is the syntax to define the selection screen input. Okay. It defines the input for the program. It defines the input for the program. So this name can be anything. Parameter name can be anything. We always follow some naming convention using p underscore corresponding name, type, and the data element, corresponding data element for this employee ID. Instead of data element, what can you use? C length 10. Like this also you can define the parameter when you don't know the exact data element name. Okay. This is how we are
Okay.
defining the selection screen input so that that selection screen input can be used in our program to pass the dynamic values as inputs. Okay.
Okay.
Clear? So where this parameter going to be displayed? In the
Selection
selection
screen.
screen. In the selection screen. Okay. When you define a parameter, the program is not going to execute directly. When you execute first, it will display the selection screen. And once the selection screen inputs are entered, then it will execute the rest of the logic. Okay. Instead of using some random data types, we use data elements. Okay. It defines the data type of the parameter. Is everyone clear? You can
for
define,
data element only we use parameters, sir.
sorry, data element.
For data elements only we can use parameters.
No, to define variables, right? To define variable also you can use data elements. Okay. No, can you repeat your question? Like what you are trying to ask?
Here under parameters we are passing data element now, sir.
Correct.
So instead of data element, can we use any other like uh,
You can use built-in types, right? Like this character length 20. You can use like this.
okay,
Okay.
okay,
Sometimes we use table name reference employee hyphen empid. Sometimes we can define like this also, but recommended way is to use data element.
okay.
Okay, to define the parameter. Okay, is everyone clear? Now let's see how to select only required fields. Here we are selecting all the columns. Let's see how to select only required fields instead of selecting all the columns. I'll comment this, write a new select statement. Before that, what is required to select only required fields? We need
Type
a
structure.
structure or type structure. Create a structure in S11 or create a type structure in the program locally. Let's see how to create a type structure. What is the syntax? Types,
Types. Begin off.
begin off, assign some name for the type structure, some meaningful name, comma, whatever the columns you want to select, mention all those columns. EMPID. Do we need to take same name as per the database table? When you are defining the type structure or structure, do you need to take same name as per the table?
Not required.
It is not required.
No.
Okay, it depends on your choice. Okay, empid, but I am taking same name, but that is not mandatory. What about type? What is the type you need to take? You can take like this, C, length, some length. You can also take like this, or if you have the exact data element, use that exact data element. Zdemo underscore empid. What is the other column you want to select? For example, city, type, check in the table for the corresponding data element. Go to the database table and check city ort01 underscore gp, comma. I just need only these two columns. End of ty underscore emp data. When I need to select only these two columns of a single record. Now define the data object, work area, that is work area, w underscore emp data, type. What is the type we need to take? Database table?
Database.
No.
ty underscore emp.
Type structure. We need to take the type structure. How to write the select statement? Select single.
Select single
Do we need to take
empid.
star? No.
No.
empid space
City.
city into work area. Rest of the things are common.
We have given
Where?
same work area name.
Hmm.
So how the data will get sorted in work area?
Sorry, what?
For first example also we have given same work area, right?
Correct. We have commented it,
Then
right?
previously we have executed, so it contains some data.
Oh, we have to clear the work area before going to initiate this.
See, observe this.
It will overwrite or it will append.
Wait. This code is not at all active, right? So when the data object will be created, tell me first.
Previously we executed.
No, tell me. See, wait. When the data objects will be created?
When the data is inserted into work area.
When we execute the program, only during program runtime. So the data object will be created and we can keep some data. Once the program execution is completed, what will happen?
It will automatically, as you already said, it's temporary.
All the data objects will be deleted. Yes or no?
Okay, so in the application layer it's getting created, sir.
It's deleted. The program execution is completed, right? Previous execution is completed. The data objects are deleted. Again, when you start the program execution, the data objects will be created again, and after once the program execution is completed, again those data objects will be deleted. Do not worry about that previous run, right? You do not need to worry about the previous run that is already completed. Data objects are deleted. You need
Sir,
to worry
so
about data objects only during program runtime. Whether you are trying to access the same data objects during the program runtime multiple times, or you are trying to define the same data object multiple times during program runtime. Okay?
so it's getting created on application layer, sir.
Correct.
On top of
Yes. The programs will execute only in application layer, right? So we are creating data objects in application layer. Once the program execution is completed, all the data objects will be deleted. Right? At the time of creating basic programs, we have discussed it. So when we are trying to assign the length and data type for the data object, right? You do not assign any length, right? We assign proper length for it because it will unnecessarily occupy the application layer memory. For example, 100 times 100 programs are executing in parallel. What will happen? Those programs will create many data objects in the application memory and it occupies a lot of space, right? When programs are executing in parallel, it will consume a lot of application space, right? It might impact the performance of the program. Once the program execution is completed, those will be deleted. Okay.
Okay.
You cannot define the same data object multiple times. For example, if I uncomment this, it won't allow you to use the same name again in the same program. What it is saying, it is already declared. You cannot use the same again. Okay. You can use a different name, one or something.
Okay.
Okay. Data objects are not permanent. Once the program execution is completed, they will be deleted. But when you are trying to do some other thing on the same data object in same program, for example, you are trying to do something in the next statement on the same data object. What you need to do at the time? At the time, you need to clear the data object or refresh the data object, right? In the single program execution, you are trying to do different things on the same data object. At that time, we clear the data objects. Okay, is everyone clear?
Yes.
Only for select queries we use work area.
We can use work area to loop the data, right? We can also manually populate the records to the work area. Okay.
For inserting operation, we want to.
At the time of insert also we use the work area.
Okay.
Wherever we need to hold a single record during program runtime, right? We are going to use a work area. Now activate the program. Now how many columns we are selecting from database table? Only two columns in the same order, whatever the order you maintained in the type structure. Sorry, not employee, right? ZDemo, which one? EMP ID. 100, execute. So it displays the corresponding data. Now let me keep a breakpoint here. I can keep breakpoint only at the executable statements. The executable statements start starting from line number 18. I kept a breakpoint here to debug the program. Execute now. It's triggering the debugger. Now let's check what is the value you can find in parameter. Whatever the value entered by the user in the selection screen. What about the work area? Double click on the work area. Double click on this. How many fields are there in the work area? Only two fields, employee ID and city. The work area is defined only with two columns, employee ID and city, right? F5 to execute the select statement. What is the sub RC?
0.
Sub RC is 0. That means select statement is successfully executed. Now let's check the work area. Corresponding values are populated, right? And since sub RC equal to 0, it is executing this write statement to display the output. Now let's check with a different employee ID 102. 102 is not available in the database table. Please remember. F5, the select statement is executed. What is the sub RC?
4.
Because that record is not available. 102 record is not available in the database statement and that select statement is failed. Okay. Is everyone clear? I'll comment this type structure one. I'll enable the previous statement, that is by using select single star. Okay, I'll comment this. I'll keep a breakpoint at this select statement. Execute. How the work area is defined in this scenario? When we use direct table reference. Check the work area. It contains all the columns of the database table, yes or no? In the same order. Because we are using direct table reference here. F5, it is selected data for all the columns. Why there is no data for email and social media columns? Because there is no value in the table. Okay, that's why these are empty. Okay, is everyone clear? Sub RC 0. If you want to populate some manual values during debug mode, if you want to change the values, how can you do that? Select this pen symbol, enter some data and press enter, right? Press enter to populate some test values in the debug mode. You can do that. Okay, is everyone clear? This is how we use select single statement to select the single record from database table. Okay, and we can use inline declarations also. Let me show you inline declarations quickly. I'll comment this.
Sir, what is F5 used for? Shortcut.
Sorry, what is it?
F5.
Function F5 in your laptop. Press function F5.
Which
Okay,
purpose? Functioning.
to execute line by line in debug mode.
Okay.
F6 is to execute function by function, and F8 it will complete the program execution in a single step. Okay.
Okay.
Now let's see inline declarations. How to write the same thing using inline declarations. Inline declarations are comes under new ABAP. Okay, advanced ABAP. How to write inline declaration? Sorry. Single star from is going to work
No.
because this is not declared, right? We commented
Yes.
it. This is not defined, right? Or we'll use a different name. Okay. Is this defined already?
No.
No, right? Is it going to work?
No,
No,
sir.
it's saying it's invalid. Sorry, select single. It is saying work area is unknown. Work area is unknown because it is not defined. How can you use inline declaration concept here without defining it separately? We use is
Data.
at the date
Steps.
data within the brackets. We use work area name, right? And we need to use one escape symbol here at the date. Escape symbol here at the date. Okay. For the parameters, if you are passing any parameters in the where condition, this is the escape sign you need to pass. Okay, this is also escape sign you need to pass because you are telling in the system that hey, I'm using inline declarations concept. Okay, data of work area means it will automatically define this work area with which fields. Are we defining any columns here? Just like the type structure, no, right? We are using select star. That means it will define a work area with all the columns of this database table. Is everyone clear?
So without creating
Sir, will it
any
define
separate
parameters
table.
also?
No. Parameters
Okay.
we have to define explicitly. It won't define
Okay.
automatically. Right? How can you pass the input value without, if you define in the program runtime, User have no choice to pass the input, right?
Okay.
You can define the variables, but not the parameters. Okay.
Okay.
This is how we can use inline declaration to define the data objects runtime in the select statement using data statement. Okay. Now, since we are using select star, it will define a work area with all the columns of the table. With all the columns of the table, let keep a breakpoint here and execute. Pass the value. If you double click, how it is defined? With all the columns of the database table. You do not need to define separately. Okay. F5 will select the data, display the output, whatever the output you wanted to display. Is everyone clear on inline declarations? Is everyone clear?
Yes.
Which one is easier? Defining data object and writing the select statement, or which one is easier for you? Inline declaration.
Inline declaration.
Inline declarations are easy and convenient. Next, let's see other example. When we need to select only required fields, how to write the inline declaration? Select single employee ID city. I want to select only these two columns. You have to use comma. When you are using inline declarations, right? You have to use a comma in between the column names. The rest of the syntax is same. Okay. Whatever the columns you wanted to select, you need to specify the column so that the work area will be defined only with these selected columns. Okay. Is everyone clear?
Okay.
Now let's check the work area. It contains only two columns. Do we need to create a type structure here? By using inline declarations, do we need a type structure
No.
like this? No, right? You do not need to create a type structure and you do not need to create a data declaration for work area, right? Within the select statement, you can do that by using inline declarations. Okay? You need to understand both old ABAP syntaxes and new ABAP syntaxes because if you are going to work in a support project, if you need to work on a ECC system, new ABAP syntaxes are not going to work. Okay? You need to understand both. And in standard SAP programs, right, they are still using old ABAP syntaxes because to make it compatible for the all customers, right? Few applications. You need to understand both. So this is how we can write select statements to select a single record by using uh, OpenSQL statements, right? Right? We can use old ABAP syntaxes as well as new ABAP syntaxes called inline declarations to select the data. What is mandatory? Very important interview question. What is mandatory when you are using select single statement? What is mandatory? Passing all the primary keys. That is recommended.